Hello and welcome to Beyond the Paradigm with me, Paul. Thank you for all those who are returning listeners and welcome to anyone who is a new listener. Tonight I'm joined by John Kirwin. John's been on my show previously, and just a reminder to all those who listened last time when I spoke to John, he is the author of the Conspiracy Theorists Survival Guide. And John has also got his own YouTube channel called Wake Up or Else. Welcome again, John.
Yes. Yeah. Good to be with you, Paul. Great to be back again.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, like John and I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, and I decided to bring John back on because some of the listeners loved the conversation that we had, but they actually wanted it to be longer. That was the only criticism that they had. So tonight, my intention is to go a little bit deeper into the rabbit hole and touch more in depth on some topics we skimmed over last time. So, like I said, guys, John's wrote a book and it's called The Conspiracy Theorists Survival Guide. And in your book, John, you say that the biggest conspiracy is that there are no conspiracies.
Yeah.
Could you sort of elaborate on that statement and comment on maybe how prevalent you think that is amongst people, that there's actually no conspiracies at all?
Yeah. Well, you would certainly think that that's what people believe the way they talk.
Mm,
If you try to bring up anything that's outside what is sometimes referred to as the Overton window, it's a term that was coined in politics that kind of meant anything outside the most widely accepted norms in society.
yeah.
Anything outside that is put into a kook category,
Mm,
where it's then attacked. It's not accepted as a new idea. It's accepted. It's characterized as something that is to be shameful to think that, and
yeah.
that's by design. The social programming and the central planners have been masters at inculcating society to attack people that question the official story, and that goes all the way back to 1967 when people were questioning the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
And of course, we then subsequently, Trump released after 50 years, he released the documents. I have a copy of them. And the Surgeon General says in that document that there were two shooters.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Yeah.
And so the conspiracy theorists were correct, and the deep state knew it.
Mm,
And so what they did was they released a document. It was a bulletin, and it went out to all of the media outlets, all the different sources of, journalists, and it gave them talking points that they were to regurgitate, right, repeat,
mm.
that would be then accepted by society. Of course, one of them is the term conspiracy theorist. And
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, they've
go ahead.
twisted it, haven't they? The CIA. I read that it was, I mean, I've read that basically a conspiracy theorist before the CIA got hold of it, it basically meant you was a thinking person, that you would actually critically evaluate something. But obviously the CIA has twisted that. And now people are conditioned to believe that anyone that's a conspiracy theorist is obviously a bit of a lunatic.
Right. It actually means a lot of things.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, a conspiracy, if you look up the definition of that, it's basically a secret plan that's bad, right? It's not good.
Mm,
It's a conspiracy. So it's something illegal, or it's something that's going to hurt you, and it's being done under the radar. And
mm,
then the word theory means it's not proven. It's
mm-hmm.
it's hypothetical. And so what that term has been able to do is, once it's introduced into the conversation, it basically is saying, look, what you're talking about, I don't believe is true. And I think you're weird for bringing it up.
Mm,
And I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want you to bring it up anymore. So those are all the types of meanings that are built into that term. And it's a shaming technique. It's a character assassination term, and it's extremely effective, but it's starting to not be effective
yeah.
because people are realizing it's mind control.
Mm. I mean, I've had it even just last week, actually. I was talking about, well, I was talking about, you know, what you talked about last time regarding the birth certificate and the bond that's basically taken out in your name and in capital letters. That's sort of a fiction. It's not. It's not a person. It's a fiction. I've been looking into it a little bit, and it's the same. It's the same for us over here in the UK. And I was actually just looking at some of my letters earlier. One off the Inland Revenue, which your version would be the IRS. My name's in full capitals on that, and obviously I was thinking, yeah, that's the fiction. That's the corporation. And I actually went on Companies House, and the United Kingdom. The UK is a multinational state, so it's made up of 4 nations in a state. But the UK is actually the United Kingdom Limited. It's listed on Companies House. So I was talking about this, and like you said, it's used as a tool. And there was somebody who I work with, not on a regular occasion, but just like straight away was like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And I was like, I'm not talking about things that's not being researched. And this is what people think when, like, I make a point every time I have a guest on to say that it's being researched. Like when I had you on the first time, and I want my audience to know that we're researching these things. We're not just pulling these things up off the top of our heads.
Right.
And I've done an episode previously where I actually use the Bible as an example about the word conspiracy. I can't remember how many times I said it was in the Bible, but I read about certain conspiracies, and I was talking to someone today about it at work, and it can be something as simple as 2 people, say at work, agree that they're both going to go early and they're not going to tell anyone. Do you know what I mean? Just simple little things like that to even bigger ones. But obviously, like you said, that the biggest conspiracies, that there's no conspiracies. But you mentioned in your book actual conspiracies that are now, we know them to be facts. You talk about Operation Northwoods. Could you sort of explain what Operation Northwoods is?
Yeah, that was a declassified operation to try to bring the U.S. into war with Cuba. And so it was a false flag operation, and it originated with the U.S. Department, excuse me, the U.S. Department of Defense in 1962. I think it was around then, and the proposals called for the CIA operatives to stage and commit acts of terrorism against not only American military, but civilian targets. So our own government was going to attack us, blaming them on the Cuban government, and then using it to justify a war against Cuba. That is in the history books. And then you have the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a similar event where they basically Trump. I mean, it's nothing new.
No.
That's what Hitler did, with the fire in the building. I can't remember the name of it now.
The beer hall push or whatever, something along them lines.
I mean, world leaders and government leaders have been using false flags for centuries, and it's just totally naive to think if Operation Northwoods is a declassified history, it's a known fact, then do you think that was the last time they ever thought of doing that or doing that? No.
No,
it's going on all the time. So to answer your question, in summary, how widespread are conspiracies? If you're talking about how much the power structure, we're a captured country. We aren't the United States anymore. It's the New World Order trap has shut on us, and they're imprisoning everybody. I just saw Joe Biggs got 17 years in prison. He was in January 6th. The only evidence, there's a picture of him standing in front of a fence with his hand on the fence.
Who's Joe Biggs, John?
Joe Biggs was a guy, he used to be a pundit on Alex Jones's show, so he's a truther.
Okay.
They gave him 17 years. And another guy I just saw, they gave him 26 years. I mean, they're coming for us. And this is no longer, conspiracies that the power structure isn't weaponized against us.
Coming. Yeah. Do you think Pearl Harbor was a false flag?
Read stuff on that they allowed that to happen to bring us
Yeah.
into war.
Yeah.
You know,
I've
when you
heard that
see,
sorry.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, when you see anything on the news, there's always at least 5 to 10 levels of truth behind it. Okay,
Mm,
let me explain what I mean. I don't know if you remember Rush Limbaugh. He was a real famous pundit for news and geopolitical stuff. So he was real famous on the radio. He'd had a 3-hour show every day, and he just talked about Democrat, Republican, Washington, voting, blah, blah. Okay, it was down in this level. And
yeah.
then, Alex Jones, love him or hate him, he's a gatekeeper, not, doesn't matter. Okay, but he came in on the next level up,
Hmm.
and he's talking geopolitical stuff, but now he's talking deep state, behind the scenes. The government officials are basically controlled through the special interest groups,
Hmm.
they which are controlled by the corporations. So it's really the corporations that run the government. It isn't we the people or the politicians. They're just puppets.
Yeah.
Pretty much, they're all of them, maybe except for a handful, one or two, five, whatever, are all either bribed or blackmailed.
Hmm.
And so that's why they promise everything, when they're getting elected, and then they just do the opposite because they're controlled. Above that, though, you start to get into people like Benjamin Fulford or other people who are talking about the higher levels above the Bank of International Settlements, the Crown of 300, the Group of 300, the
Yeah.
Pinyard, all those really lofty groups that are above the Vatican and all that. Those are the people that actually control what's happening. And they have these meetings in Davos once a year. It used to be, what's the place called? Come on, I can't remember now. Where they would all meet, the world leaders would meet. Now they got a website. It was a conspiracy theory for
Was
all
it,
those years.
was it Bilderberg?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Bilderberg. Bilderberg was a conspiracy. Oh, you mean you believe that the world leaders are all meeting in private to plan, what's going to happen in the world? That was for years. That was the narrative.
Yeah.
And now they have a website.
Bilderberg group. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what truthers do. They force the conspiracy out into the open.
Mm,
Okay. But my point is that the world that has been presented to us is more fake than the Truman Show. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Truman Show.
I actually, I actually only watched it last week because I
Okay.
didn't actually realize it was out in the 90s. Like that's
Yes.
how far behind. I've watched The Matrix. I don't even know why I never got around to watching it, but I made a point. I think when we talked last time, you mentioned I knew about it. I'd just never seen it. And like after I sat there and I was like, yeah, that's a fake world, but this is a fake world as well.
Right.
Really fake. And
Really fake.
I don't think people will be able to fully grasp how fake. Like I try and talk to people all the time about, you see a news reporter doing an interview or whatever with a politician, and I said basically they're both actors. The journalist probably knows the politician in the outside world anyway. Sometimes they do, and it's just an act.
Right. So I'll give you an example. I don't believe when I go outside, I'm in a TV studio, like in
No,
the,
yeah.
but in that movie, there's a scene where he's finding out that he's in a TV studio. And at
Yeah.
one point, one of the spotlights, like a stage light, accidentally falls from its moorings up out of sight, and it falls down, and he sees it, and he goes over, and it says Cirrus on it.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
It's
which
near
is
the beginning of the film, that isn't it? He picks it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, now that is predictive programming. They love to push the tyranny and the deception that they're perpetrating on us in our faces,
Mm,
because that is actually happening to you. Let me
yeah.
explain. If you Google China launches simulated sun, you will find articles that China has this artificial sun that they launched. It cost them $1 trillion. And there's a number of different channels that are talking about the fact that either Nibiru or some nebula is come into between the real sun and the earth. And in order to cover up the end of the world, they have this unimaginable technology that has put a fake sun into the sky. It's unimaginable. Now, a lot of people have produced very, very powerful evidence. In other words, if you look at the simulated sun array, it's like an 8 hexagon figure, right? And there's all these journalists that have pictures in the sky where you see 8 hexagons in the sky.
Wow.
So they're up there, probably on the dome. Now, the light that we see from the sun is white, and it's not yellow. Like, so many pictures and cartoons and will show a yellow sun. We don't have a yellow sun, and maybe you haven't noticed that, but it's very white and it burns our skin differently. And so in a way, you live in more of a menagerie than if it was a TV studio, because the very sun in the sky is not real.
Yeah.
So that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you've wrote in your book, this is probably going to be one as well that's going to be hard for people to swallow. You wrote, human leaders in exchange for great wealth follow directions from fallen angels and non-human underlings. And you go on to mention like different evidence. What evidence is there to support that for those that will possibly find that very hard to believe?
Right. Well, that's a great question. It's, of course, a very complex one.
Yeah.
Because much of that is hidden from humanity. So the question is, how do I know that there's an elite group of people that run the world from behind the scenes that have basically have a bloodline from Genesis 6 fallen angels? So to answer that question, first of all, I have to tell you that I have a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
So I base my worldview on the teachings of Scripture first and foremost. Anything that is in direct contradiction to what the Bible teaches, I reject.
Yeah.
So if you say you're a god, I have to disagree. Okay, stuff like that. So what we learn in Genesis 6 is just a snippet, and it says the sons of God, I'm quoting it from memory, the sons of God came down, they saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took of them whichever they chose. So we have this very odd little vignette. It's very limited, that apparently some of the fallen angels decided that they were going to cohabitate with women, and then the Bible teaches us that they then gave birth to giants. Now, the theologians don't like supernatural stuff, so they like to make it more naturalistic. So they said that story is just the sons of Seth. There's no phenomenalness in it, right? But that's nonsense. The book is a supernatural book, and I'm a supernaturalist. So it is what it says it is. And there's about 17 references to giants in the Bible. And most famous one is Goliath. And he had 5 brothers. They all had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Now, from there, you have the book of Enoch, which really fills in a lot of the gaps to that Genesis 6 account and whatever else we have from the Bible. But then you have the writings of all civilizations, all of which have vast references to these giants, and also the Anunnaki who come down from above, and these people that have all this technology. That's every civilization, going back to the Sumerians. Then you have whistleblowers that are on the inside. Then you have the extra biblical books like the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees, the book of Adam and Eve. And the Bible refers to Jasher. It says, "Is it not written in the book of Jasher?" That's in the book of Judges.
Yeah.
And so all of these things and more taken together allow us to try to discern what is really happening. And what we see is that the elite were the bloodline of these fallen ones. So they're sort of like demigods in a way. They only breed within themselves. The Rothschilds and all those people, they don't marry outside of their bloodline.
No.
And
there's,
so
there's 13 there's 13 families, isn't there? And the Rothschilds is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So they essentially believe that they rule through bloodline, right? Like the kings, monarchies, you didn't vote for the king. You got the king's son. So if you didn't like it, you'd get your head chopped off. That's their viewpoint. And, apparently God's going to allow this thing to play out all the way into the tribulation, which we're on the doorstep of. And they get their little time in the sun. And those of us who walk in purity and holiness get to, be martyred, or maybe not. It depends if you're pre, mid, or post-trib. I'm a post-tribber. I don't believe there's a pre-trib rapture. It might be mid-trib, but it probably isn't.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
That's my position as well.
I mean, God spends us like money. He has a different value on our on our skin. He has an eternal perspective, and the blood of the saints is the seed of the church. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And so, many of us, even now, are being martyred. Like I mentioned, Joe Biggs and many like that are just, look at what they're doing to Trump. I mean, if they go after him, like they're going after him on nothing, they've indicted a past president and the front runner in the next election. I mean, it's Banana Republic times 100. And so if they'll do that to him, they'll do it to you. So they've now hired 87,000 IRS agents, new ones. And we confirmed this, that the classified ads stated that they had to be willing to come to the audits with a firearm. That's a real classified. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
It's no longer, I'm going to go along to get along. I'm going to lay low. No, it's pitchfork time. It's time to, it is time to have a voice in this hour. I call it the hour of the Klingon. If you ever watch Star Trek, Worf and the Klingons were a warlike race, and they were all into honor, and they had a saying, "Today is a good day to die." They just relished dying in battle, because then they would have a legacy where they would be spoken of in Kobotor or whatever, and that's like William Wallace. William Wallace was told, "You need to be quiet. They're going to kill you." And his response was priceless. He said, "All men die, but not all men live."
Yeah. So there's a theory I wanted to ask you about, and with you being in the States there, you're going to know more than I do about this. But the theory is that in 1954, and I'm just going to warn some of my hearers now, this is going to sound pretty wild, but this is an actual theory, right? So in 1954, that President Eisenhower made a treaty with aliens called the Greada Treaty. And then in 1957, in Alexandria, Virginia, a policeman witnessed a UFO landing in a field, and then a tall white man emerged from the craft, and he approached the officer calmly, identifying himself as Valiant Thor, sent by the High Council and he requested that he might speak with the President Eisenhower. So how did these theories come about, John? And is there actually any evidence at all to support these claims?
Oh, sure. There's all kinds of evidence that supports that there was a crash at Area 51, and they recovered, crash bodies and equipment, and they reverse engineered it. There was a couple whistleblowers. I can picture a guy, I can't remember his name. And then there was the, report that came out in the news that it was an alien spaceship. And then the next day it came out, no, it was a weather balloon. But people took the picture of that initial news thing, and through advanced technology, they were able to blow it up and see that it was an alien ship. They said they didn't censor it right away.
No.
So it got out in the news. But see, that whole narrative is now being revealed, because all of my life, the official story was, there's no such thing as aliens. You're crazy. It's a conspiracy theory, and they mocked it. Well, now you have congressional hearings with high-level government officials from within the government testifying that they are in possession of biologicals. And the congresswoman said, "Do you mean human remains?" And he said, "No." And then they had said that they have off-world technology. And actually, Tucker Carlson, about 6-8 months ago, did a 3-part series, 3 days in a row, when he was still on Fox. You can look it up, where he said, the government has released declassified documents saying they're in possession of off-world technology. And that's soft disclosure, man. It's happening. Right now.
Yeah, I mean, the story regarding this Valiant Thor, which I've read, I mean, it's a very strange story. I mean, according to this guy called Frank Stranges, Eisenhower actually asked this apparent alien where he was from, and this Valiant Thor gives a rather cryptic response to him and says, "The morning and evening star." And apparently the alleged sort of dialogue goes along the lines of Eisenhower says to him, "Please, sir, what is your name and where do you come from?" And then this Valiant Thor says, "I come from the planet your Bible calls the morning and evening star." And Eisenhower says to him, "What, Venus?" And this alien says, "Yes, sir." And Eisenhower says, "Can you prove this?" Thor says, "What do you constitute as proof?" And apparently Eisenhower responded by saying, "I don't know." And they're saying this Valiant Thor was from Venus, and these Venetians, they lived inside Venus, and apparently he had one lung and an IQ of 1200. I mean, is there anything that can support such that's quite a big claim to make? And I mean, when you look into the story, they obviously have a picture of this guy in different places, and apparently he was in the White House meetings and the Pentagon and all kinds of things for like 3 years. He was privy to many private sort of conversations and all sorts of. So, I mean, like, what's the word sort of on the street over there in the States regarding this Valiant Thor? Like, where's this story materialized from? Because I always think that it can't be just completely concocted. It must be based on something.
Right. So, like I was saying before, if you look at the biblical worldview, the Bible doesn't tell, and even the book of Enoch, which wasn't canonized, but it does go deep into that topic. It's a tough read, but it's a lot of angel stuff and judgment, and it talks a lot about the spirit realm. Enoch is a super spiritual book, right? So what we're never told about any kind of other races. According to the biblical worldview, there's God on the good side and the devil on the bad side. Okay, let's start with that. Then there's angels, and then there's humans. Okay. And then there's disembodied. It's quite clear from Steve Quayle's research and many other researchers and people that believe the demons are the disembodied spirits of the giants. When
Yeah,
the demigods,
I've heard that. Yeah.
they're demigods. That's where all the Greek mythology comes from. It's all just the fallen angel offspring makeover.
Mm.
Okay. And so the narrative that you're talking about, it's very seductive. And it's all this intrigue. And it's in 100 movies where our planet was seeded from alien life.
Mm.
And now they're going to come back as we reach this next vibration to help us. And there's good aliens and there's bad aliens. Well, all that narrative is to get you to deny the existence of God. That's the
Yeah.
biblical worldview. Just like on a lower level, you got the picture of the monkey to the man, right? That was put in front of our faces when I was a kindergarten. And so that picture tells you there's no God, because you're a monkey, and then the monkey evolves over millions of years and becomes a man. You don't need a God if you have evolution. Well, the whole alien deception is the exact same deception.
Yeah.
It's that there's no God, there's no creator. You were created by these other beings that are coming from another galaxy.
Yeah.
And they have advanced technology. They can travel through wormholes or light speed. All that is not biblical. Okay, what's biblical is that the earth is flat and stationary with a dome over it, because the Bible teaches us that God set the firmament in the sky. And the word firmament means a hard, impenetrable barrier.
Yeah.
And then Job says, is not the sky as hard as glass? And if you have a vacuum in space and there's no barrier, if you puncture an aerosol hairspray can, it's under pressure, you put a hole in it, it's going to normalize with the pressure outside of it. And we're asked to believe that this high pressure system of space to vacuum isn't sucking all of the air off of the earth because of gravity. And so the Bible is always, science is always catching up with the Bible. Anyway, all of that stuff, you see it in all the Alien movies and 100 other movies where it's this really seductive story with technology and all these cool concepts. It's all smoke and mirrors to get you to deny God. Because in the end, what they really are, according to biblical worldview, is there's fallen angels that are physical beings. Then I believe the grays are clones that they have created to allow them to interact in the natural realm, because some of them, it appears that some of them are imprisoned, maybe in the Antarctic, Tartarus.
Yeah.
Others
Peter
are,
talks about it. Yeah.
Yeah, the prince of the power of the air. Others may be in the spirit realm. We don't really know where they are.
No.
But it is clear that the alien deception is picking up speed, right? There's more sightings all the time now, and now they got official people coming forward and confessing it's real. So I believe we're on the doorstep of Project Bluebeam. And what Werner von Braun said to one of his aides or whoever it was, the last card they're going to play is the alien deception.
Yeah.
And that's about to happen. They're prepping us for it. And so that's why I said every news thing has 5 or 6, 10 levels behind it. So these guys coming forward, telling the world that aliens are real, has, about 10 levels of truth behind it. What does it really mean that they're doing that?
Yeah. You mentioned the greys. What about, I've heard of 2 other types of aliens, the Insectolins and then the Nordics.
Right. Well, there was a couple of guys that they weren't Christians, and they did a 10-year research project on crop circles. And so they interviewed all these people. They analyzed, because some of the crop circles actually, there was one that gave a message, and then there were people that were channeling the voices of the people leaving the crop circles, and then all this stuff. And their conclusion was that the people doing the crop circles were demons and they were liars. Because why would aliens travel 100 light years to come here and tell us that Jesus isn't God? Because that's what they always do.
Yeah.
All the alien abduction victims, anybody who's channeling supposedly ascended masters, and then any of the writings in the crop circles, all of them are preaching a religious message that Jesus Christ is not God. They name his name and they disparage him. They're trying to push you away. And these guys are not even Christians. And they're like, this seems pretty obvious that these guys have like this religious agenda. So our conclusion is they're not aliens. No. They're demons. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You mentioned the abduction, and obviously, like some people will just think, oh yeah, abduction, it's not real, and people are just making it up. But I mean, you're talking multitudes of people around the world who have claimed abduction, and some of these people have gone missing, and then they've come back with like injuries, or they've woken up the family members because they've been banging on the door, but they was laying in bed with their wife or the husband or whatever, and they've been banging on the door on the outside, and the family member's gone down and locked the door. They didn't have a key on them, and they were like, why are you outside? And they're like, I don't know. So there is something going on. What this abduction, is it a program? I've heard that, they're abducting people as part of a program, and they're doing all kinds of experiments on them or whatever. What do you think this abduction phenomenon is?
Oh, yeah. According to the whistleblowers, that Eisenhower did make a treaty with them.
Yeah.
And the agreement was that they would give humans the technology in exchange for the ability to abduct humans for food and experimentation. And actually, you're going to have L.A. Marzulli on here. So, he did a couple of a series of videos, and he had a doctor who did he did a surgery on a bunch of people that were abducted, who said that they had something implanted in their leg, and they went in. This is on his videos, and they pulled out these things maybe the size of a grape or a little smaller, and then they cut them open in a laboratory with but they needed like a laser, because they couldn't cut it. It was so hard. And it was inside of it. It was millions of little micron tunnels, and they couldn't really discern how it worked, but it was very advanced technology. And it was physically in their legs. And there was no like surgery cut there. It was perfectly normal. But the people testified that when they were abducted, they had these things implanted. And then L.A. Marzulli did the whole thing. It was total proof. The people were telling the truth.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you what I believe they're doing. Okay. The Psalms 2 says, the kings of the earth will wage war against the Lord. Okay, so in this final battle of Armageddon, the fallen angels have convinced the elite that they can win a war against Jesus. I mean, the devil's crazy. You can't beat Jesus, the creator. So anyway, they're going to try to wage war against Jesus. And in order to do that, they have to create this army. So when you look at what it means, when the fallen angels said they saw that the daughters of men were fair, that word means fit vessels, appropriate vessels. So the abduction program is partly a food source, unfortunately, but it's mostly an experimentation thing where they're trying to figure out how they can terraform the earth with the chemtrails, and then they can modify the humans with the gene therapy and the nanotechnology that they're spraying on us, and then prepare our bodies to be able to be inhabited by these demons. And then it'll be a zombie apocalypse, and they'll use us to fight Jesus in Armageddon. Because once you take the mark, it says that you're damned.
Yeah.
Because
there's no salvation for those that take the mark.
Right. You won't be human anymore. And Jesus, didn't come to save non-humans, only humans. And that goes to Noah when it says that he was pure in his genealogies.
Yeah.
Noah was one of the few left that hadn't been contaminated with the fallen angel DNA. It's really a phenomenal.
Yeah.
The story that we're living is more fantastical than most of us could even imagine.
I mean, it's like, C.S. Lewis wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and then you've got Tolkien writing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and you think that that's fantastical. People need to start reading the Bible. I mean, we're talking fire coming down from heaven,
right?
Men walking on water, people ascending into the sky, axe heads floating, talking donkeys, and these things, talking snakes, obviously a serpentine being, fire raining down from heaven. So if people think the Bible's boring, I think they need to pick it up. And all them things are true. Yeah. It's not a fiction. You talk about, so we've sort of touched on maybe this abduction program and maybe a breeding program, and it actually fits quite nicely with my next question. So you talk about the trans apocalypse in your book, and this is in relation to a transgender breeding program. Could you elaborate on this breeding program and the evidence that there is to support this?
Yeah, that's one of those conspiracies that really takes the wind out of your sails. That one hit me so hard because if you get the book, there's links at different parts of the book. There's links out to videos to support that. And I did a video that shows you how you can know that you start to study the anatomy features of the human skeleton. The male skull is bigger than the female skull. It's shaped differently. The male hips are different. The cheekbones, the Adam's apple, the slant of the shoulder, the length of the middle finger is different for the man and the woman. And all these easily telltale signs are still there, even if someone was born a male and is now a female. All right. And so the transpocalypse means that there are so many people in positions of power that it's almost universal. Like an apocalypse is when boom, it's like everywhere. And so pretty much most or almost all government officials, the governor, certainly up the highest levels, the presidents, Trudeau and his wife. He's a woman, she's a man. Obama was married to Michael, right? We all know Michael was not Michelle. She was dancing on what's her name's show, and she had a bulge in her pants. You could see it clear as day. And then the other lady, what's her name, confessed it on TV. Oh, Michael is a tranny. Everybody knows it. Well, she mysteriously died like a month later. And twice Obama slipped when he was addressing the military, and he said, yes, me and Michael, that's what came out of his mouth. Twice that happened.
I mean, I've looked at her.
Yeah.
And I, the first time I ever seen Michelle, as they call her now, I was just like, that's got to be a guy.
Yeah.
He's so big. I mean, I seen a picture today, actually. I think it was on Twitter, and it was a meme, and it was Michelle Obama from behind, and her back is rippling with muscle.
Yes, indeed.
Like a guy's back, and the hands and everything.
The problem with this one, though, is that there are so many once you learn how to recognize the anatomical clues, you start to see it everywhere. All of the newscasters, the talking heads, the talk show hosts, the military people, the CEOs of companies, the pharmaceutical people, the politicians, all the actors, actresses, the pop stars, and you know, like, you start to think, where am I? I'm in some sort of petri dish. I'm in a maze. This is why I say it's more unreal than the Truman Show.
Mm.
Because in order for that to happen, which is the case, if you study how to see the anatomy, you will start to see pretty much most or all of the female actresses, the A-lister actresses, are all men, and the men are women. And your mind is so blown that you don't even know what to do. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And so what the turning point for me, and I talk about it in the book, was Gina Fafala, I think her name is, was the front page of the Playboy for the German version of Playboy, and it says she was born a guy, right? That's what Playboy is saying, and that's what her Wikipedia bio is saying. So I'm able to pretty much agree, and because that's obviously rampant now. Mm-hmm. But she's as beautiful as any woman I've ever seen, right? So what happened in my mind was, because I was 100% certain that she actually was born a guy and then changed, but she was so attractive, it really broke the spell in my mind. And from that point on, I was able to accept what my eyes were seeing, because your mind fights it, you know, because it still happens to me all the time. I'll be watching a movie and I'll start looking and I'll be go, oh my gosh, not her. It just happened to me the other day. Who was that? Jennifer Paltrow. What's her name?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow, right? Yeah. She's a guy, and I'm like, not her. So it's kind of like losing a friend. And so you have to then assume that this is a actual planned program, because these people haven't made a choice about their sexuality private and kept it private. This is organized because it's pretty much everybody that's in a position of power or in visible, you know, power structure, or in Hollywood or whatever. So it's essentially like they're created in the lab, and then they're given a backstory, and then they're placed in these positions because they're basically MK Ultra mind control people that they can control. I mean, that sounds fanciful, but I'm sorry, you know, what I'm telling you is true, and you can find out how to know it's true very easily. And then you can start to see all the people that you think are women aren't, and you're going to have to deal with it. Because I did. That one really was a gut punch.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned MK Ultra. I actually did an episode on mind control where I mentioned MK Ultra. And obviously that was officially stopped. But there's then the Monarch mind control program, which sort of took over from MK Ultra. And I believe that the Stranger Things series is you know, they have these children and in these laboratories and whatever, and that actually is based on the Monarch mind control program. So like this stuff's still ongoing. I mean, they've claimed that that's not ongoing, but it clearly there's mind control going on.
Yeah, there was 2 years ago, there was a law that they passed that basically said they can now use propaganda on the American people. It's not, because it was illegal up until that point. But now it's not. It was a law, I don't remember the name of it, that was in place that disallowed the government or the military to use propaganda against the United States citizens. That law was rescinded, and they are now free to mess with your mind and whatever methodology they want, and they're using tons of it. It's not any one thing either. It's subliminals, which, by the way, are proven to be very effective. Like, they did studies where they were able to increase the popcorn sales at movies 50% by just flashing popcorn, you know.
Mm.
And so then, there's infrasonics, there's a lot of cell phone towers going up that aren't cell phone towers. They have malevolent purposes. And then there's all kinds of chemical. And now we're dealing with nanotechnology. The nanites in the hydrogel that's, well, about 10 years ago, they went to DARPA and they said, we need you to create a technology that allows us to chip people. We want to put brain chips in them without surgery.
Mm.
And so it took them 10 years, and they developed hydrogel, which was the transport mechanism, and nanotechnology. And these nanites have up to 33, believe it or not, 33 different functionalities.
Mm.
They can program them and then trigger them with a frequency. So one might be to release a chemical, one might be to release a poison or a frequency. And there's patents that they have that allow them to basically control your behavior, your attitudes, your beliefs, your thoughts. There's the voice to skull technology, and it is on, man. I mean, if you're not walking with Jesus, you are just like a turkey shoot.
Yeah.
You better get right with God and make sure that God is got a hedge around you, because
Mm.
if you're not walking in the supernatural, you're going to be extremely vulnerable.
Mm. Well, we've seen, yeah, vulnerability, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that, didn't we, during the COVID pandemic? And like you, I believe that was a planned crisis.
Yes.
And you sort of mention in your book, and if you could sort of just elaborate on what events 201 are, Clade X, Dark Winter, Atlantic Storm, just to sort of highlight to those who may be skeptical whether COVID was a pandemic or a plandemic. I think that would help people to understand that it was a plandemic.
Really? I mean, it seems unimaginable that people would still believe the official story, but I guess it's possible.
Yeah.
Because you have the top virologists in the world coming out and calling it a bioweapon, like the head, Dr. Yeadon, who is the head of Pfizer's vaccine scientific. He was the head scientific advisor for Pfizer for vaccines.
Mm.
He stepped down, and he said, this is a bioweapon designed to cull humanity and is an extinction level event.
Yeah.
So it's not a vaccine anyway. It's a gene therapy. It's designed to alter your genes. The idea that anyone would have taken that is so mind-boggling to me. It wasn't FDA approved. It was rushed to market. And it's the storyline of 100 movies where the pharmaceutical company creates a vaccine and then releases the virus to sell the vaccine. You know
Yeah.
how many billionaires were created in the last 2 years? 500.
Yeah. Follow
Yeah.
the money. Yeah.
Well, they're consolidating all the wealth.
Yeah.
Like Bezos, wealth increased tenfold because all the stores got locked down. Everybody had to buy from Amazon. I mean, that's ingenious. But these people are psychopathic mobsters. They're power hungry, and they've bitten down on the Luciferian narrative. And Isaiah 14 talks about these leaders, these elites. And what it says is they are going to be there on Judgment Day when Satan is brought out. And this is what the Bible says they're going to say. They're going to say, is this the man that caused nations to tremble? They're deceived by this guy. They think that the devil is the good guy, that God's a big meanie. He doesn't want you to have any fun, right? He's got all these rules, and they're going to merge with machines. That technology is already there. Avatar and all that stuff is real.
Yeah.
And
Transhumanism, isn't it? Transhumanism.
yes, it's transhumanism, baby. It's all real. And they bit down on that. Like, what's that movie? Oblivion? No, that's Tom Cruise. It's Matt Damon is in a movie where there's a space center up in this in orbit, and then everybody's just brawling, and all the humans are down here. And they got the med beds. The med beds are about to get rolled out. If you're a Christian, if you're a Christian, do not get in a med bed. Because
what are med beds, John? Just for my listeners who don't know what they are, just briefly.
You've seen these in the Alien movie, like the third Alien movie, where they go to the planet and they see the alien, and the guy who created it all goes there. There's a med bed in that movie. There's a med bed in the movie with Matt Damon, which is escaping me. I'll look it up. Hold on, let me give it to you. Matt Damon movie where he goes to space. Isn't this incredible that I could do that and it comes up? Not The Martian, Elysium. That's what it's called.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know what I can't remember seeing it. But...
There's a scene in the end where they get up there and they put the girl who's sick in a med bed. And then there's another scene in the Alien movie where the girl has a med bed. Well, these are real. Okay. And they work on it using a quantum computer, and they scan you at the quantum level, and you can basically have new teeth, you can have new bones, you can have new organs, you can have any disease you have is eliminated. You know, you can extend your life probably to 300 or 400 years. I mean, it is, I don't know about the extending the life part, but I know that there's actually a clinic in Europe where it's already using a lower form of this. It's only for brain tumors, but you can go in, you put this cap on, and your brain tumor is gone. Boop.
Wow.
Now, the problem is, though, people that walk with God have been told by God, do not get in this thing, because you're basically getting into a system that is given to us by the ETs, who are demons. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's going to alter your DNA. You're going to be scanned, and then you'll be able to be tracked everywhere. But ultimately, it's going to change your DNA. And God didn't send a dog to die on the cross. Okay. If he sent Spot to die on the cross, then all the dogs could go to heaven. He didn't send a cat to die on the cross, because if he did, all the cats could be saved. He sent a man. Jesus became a man. So if you're a man, then you have a savior. If you repent of your sins and believe that story. Okay, but if you go into the med bed, you're not going to be a man anymore. That's basically what I believe. So I will die, with all my, pains and whatever. I'm not getting in that thing.
No, I won't be doing it either. I can assure you. I didn't get the jab, and I won't be getting the jab either. I mean, these things that I mentioned before, like this Clade X and Dark Winter, they were basically like simulations, weren't they?
Oh yeah, I never answered that. So these are so telltale. It's so obvious that the things that we're experiencing now were already planned and executed, because in those things, whatever we call them, these exercises.
Yeah.
One of them had the storyline in, I think it was Clade X or one of them. The storyline was a virus is released accidentally from a lab in Wuhan, China. And then it gets out, and there's all these very specific details of what then actually happened. And you think, come on. I mean, they do that on purpose. They do these things on purpose. They put, like, I remember I saw 4 different bombings. The Boston bombing, then there was the one in Vegas, and then there was 2 other ones. And somebody made a video about it. And they had the exact same lady interviewed who happened to be there in all 4 of the bombings. And in each one, she had a different hair color, different clothes. One she had glasses, one she didn't. But okay, so it's so obvious that it's the same lady, and she just happened to be in their interview, and she's got a different name and a different backstory in each one. Now, why would they do that? Why would they put, if it's fake, right? It's a false flag to try to, drum up, taking away your guns, right? Or whatever they want to bring tyranny in. Why would they put such an obvious clue in their fakery? to tip you off. Well, the reason is because the elite have a dogma that they believe they have to tell you what they're doing to you before they do it. And then they have to give you a clue so that then they're off the hook in front of the courts of heaven, because then they can say, look, they're so dumb, they deserve to be ruled. They believe like might makes right, like the mobsters will tell you. Hey, you're dumb enough for me to rob you, you deserve it.
Yeah.
That's how they believe, right? So it's kind of like it's a part of their incantation, like a pinch of a dead man's grave and a pinch of batwing. Like the witch is creating this cauldron and she's putting this stuff in, right? So they put the same lady in this 4 different things in 4 different parts of the country with different hair color. Why? Because it's so obvious that you'll watch that and you still won't. You'll still believe the media is telling you the truth, and they're journalists. And you see the lunar lander. It looks like it's made of cardboard. The cardboard's buckling. It's like, and it looks like it's got curtain rods. It's made of, and then on the poles coming down, it's got Scotch tape on it, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you look up how hot is it on the moon, it says 200 degrees. So Scotch tape isn't going to work if it's 200 degrees. Okay, it's going to melt.
Yeah.
So, and they'll tell you, well, it's 200 degrees, but there's no atmosphere, so it's not 200 degrees. Well, that's because there's no particles in the atmosphere, right? And so that doesn't propagate the heat. Well, what happens when the heat hits the lunar lander, bro? That's got particles. So as soon as solar radiation hit the lunar lander, it would melt. It would burst into flames. It's made of cardboard, right? So you look at that thing, and if you can look at that and not go wiggy and be like, what am I looking at? If you don't do that and you put your little NASA t-shirt on again, that's when the spell comes over you. You lose the capacity to discern. You're bewitched because you've given over to willful ignorance.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to be true. You don't want to be told you've been tricked. It's because of pride. Yeah. Somebody said it's easier to deceive someone than to convince them that they've been deceived.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've said that to people, like the nature of deception is that you don't know you've been deceived.
That's right.
So of course people are going to go, well, I'm not deceived, but that's the nature of deception, and that's what people like grasping hold of. And like you mentioned, the mainstream media there, they use crisis actors. That's what you're talking about when you mentioned this lady for crisis actors. Yeah. I mean, we can't trust the mainstream media, can we? There's that sort of, I seen it on, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast, where he brings up multiple news stations and they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, and there's like 50 on the screen,
yes,
and they're all just saying the same thing. And it's the same during the COVID pandemic. Yeah, the same slogans, the science says. I think you've mentioned it before. It's not science, it's scientism.
Yes.
It's not real science. And they wheel out their own scientists, the government approved scientists. And I've said it before, I said it in my episode on COVID. I've said they use this appeal to authority, but that assumes that this person is honest and that they don't have any sort of selfish interest in gaining more money for research and whatever else. But as I said in that episode, I said that these people are being leaned on, say this and we might be able to put some money your way for that research program you wanted to do, and they want to climb the ladder. There's ambition there. So, I mean, I said in that we just can't trust these people.
No, it's hard to believe that the power structure has been able to basically control the media, the pharmaceutical industry, Hollywood, and of course the governments and the narrative and the whole NASA thing. They're able to initiate wars, and they control all the financial systems. The markets are all rigged. Their control seems like they're all powerful, but they're really not. They're not all powerful.
No.
And they do need our cooperation. And we know that's true because Klaus Schwab just admitted that they had to push their timetable back to 2030. We should
Yeah.
have already been in full on tyranny by now. But it's
Mm.
people like you, Paul, and myself
Yeah.
who have been a thorn in their side. You know, they're not censoring us for no reason.
No. And we've
They
got
are.
to keep speaking out. Like,
Yes.
it's important. It really is important.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that's happening over here, I don't know whether it's the same over there in the United States. There's a real battle in Parliament at the minute over this conversion therapy. They're trying to ban it. And the reality of it is this. So what they talk about is, oh, you know, like corrective rape and all these types of things. But all the things that they push to the forefront are already illegal. But when you actually dig into it, what they're really trying to ban is prayer, praying with someone who's practicing homosexual, even if they want you to, and
Sure.
speaking to them and preaching. So this is the battle, you know, like you said, they're coming for us. And this is one that we're going through at the minute. And it's back and forth in Parliament at the moment. There's debates going on and amendments over this thing, you know, and obviously Christians are praying hard about it. Because ultimately what'll happen is they'll be dragging us off the streets and arresting us. I mean, that happens anyway. I was watching a video just the other day, and it was something that happened last year. An older gentleman in London, two policemen, one of them tore his Bible out of his hand, you know, and arrested him.
Yeah.
And then they ended up de-arresting him. And rather than letting him out in an area where his Oyster card worked because of his zone that he was in, they took him out of zone so he couldn't even get the bus.
Yeah.
It's the sort of things that they're doing. So you said in your book, and I think we'll finish on this sort of question, that the United Nations is being used to condition human beings for a one world government. What would you say to those people that would be skeptical to such a claim as that?
Well, you only have to do the research on who started it. It was Aldous Huxley, who wrote the white papers on transhumanism, and what the mission statement was. They don't really hide it if you look. They don't believe that that humanity cares enough and is smart enough to actually read what they're writing, because they do expose their plans in their white papers and in their biographies.
Yeah.
So it's all in there. And you know, it isn't a kumbaya, you know, company or organization to help people. The, the 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 rollout of what they're doing is bringing all of the independent countries under one jurisdiction, which is exactly what John on the Isle of Patmos saw for us. I mean, that he nailed it. I mean, it is all rolling out. And you sort of saw that first attempt with the League of Nations. And back then, in those days, the churches were preaching more eschatology. They were preaching end day stuff. And so when they tried to roll out the League of Nations to say, no more wars, we have to all come together, everybody, all the church people said, no, we don't accept that's one world stuff. We're not going there. So the Bible has warned us against this kind of homogenization of everybody. As, you know, it might sound good, you know, but it's the Hegelian dialect. You create the problem and then you offer the solution to the problem, but you don't want their solution.
No. There's a price.
Yes.
A heavy price.
Yes. The Hegelian dialect is what the United Nations is.
Yeah. I mean, obviously people, they don't believe, a lot of people don't believe in the devil and Satan, but that's his greatest trick. We said it before, and you know, that he's convinced the world that he doesn't exist. But I think the key word, what I always pick out in Genesis 3, is when it says that he was more subtle. He was more subtle than all beasts of the field. And this is the point in all this. They've got to look at it and say, you know, he isn't running around with horns and, you know, like with a pitchfork. This being, what we call Satan, is so subtle and has bewitched the minds of the majority of the world. And I know that sounds far-fetched to many people, but you and I as Christians obviously know that to be true.
Yes.
You know, and like we were just saying before, this is obviously the things we've been talking about are very important. People, you know, we hope that they wake up to this. And just in closing, John, just remind us where people can get hold of you, like your YouTube channel and everything.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
give us a brief talk on that.
Okay, sure. Most of my content is on YouTube at Wake Up or Else. It's all one word. And we also have the website wakeuporelse.com. You can get the book on Amazon. If you can't find it there, just go to wakeuporelse.com. It's right there on the front page. That'll link through to it. It's called the Conspiracy Theorists Survival Guide, and it's 300 pages of inspiration, validation, tips and encouragement for truthers where your spouse, your children, they're disrespecting you. They don't want to know what you know. You're isolated. You're really struggling with the response of the people around you. That's what the book's really about.
Yeah.
And then, what I cover over the last 7 years is I provide a biblical analysis of the Mandela effect.
Yeah, I did an episode on that. So for any of my listeners who want to know what the Mandela effect is, you could obviously go to John's YouTube channel, and I also have an episode on that. And I can totally, your book, I've been reading through it, and like you said, it can become a very lonely place because, most people, they're just not even bothered. You speak to them and you tell them these things, these shocking things. Obviously, some don't believe you. Some look like they're listening, but they don't care in the end because they just go about the comfortable lives. And that I think that was the whole thing to do with COVID and the injections. I've asked people, why did you have it if you don't know what's in it? Well, I wanted to go on holiday. Well, that's not a good enough reason to have this something what you don't know in your body. It's not good enough. But to be honest, just sort of over the last couple of months, when I've had conversations with people about it, you can tell some of them are now embarrassed.
Oh, yes.
And I said to them, you'll not meet anyone that hasn't had the jab that regrets that. Not one, but multiple people are now regretting having it.
I don't even know what to say. When people tell me they got the jab and a booster, I'm speechless. I have no hope for them except to repent of your sins. So when you die, you'll go to heaven. God might heal you, but it's a eugenics program. But it's not just you. If that's you, if you took that, we're all in this together. They've blown up 120 food manufacturing plants since January. They've cut off the fertilizer. They're shutting the financial system down. So they're going to come for your money through the tax program. So we're all in this together. Don't feel so bad if you stub your toe, you took that. Just get on your knees and cry out to Jesus. He could give you new skin, new blood, new organs. If your heart is right before him, he will work miracles in your life and you can fulfill your destiny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can become quite dark when we're talking about things like this, and people can listen to what we're talking about and they can feel hopeless. But as Christians, we have that hope. And I was just thinking about it today, when it says, and you shall see the Son of Man come in great glory and great power. That's what we're waiting for. So, yeah, it is going to become dark and it's going to get even darker. But at the darkest moment, that's when he'll come, and that's our hope. So for those of you who aren't Christians, like John said, you need to get on your knees because these things are coming, guys. These things are real, and your only hope is Jesus, as both John and I can testify to that. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on again, John. Thank you very much for coming. Just for all my listeners out there, you can get me on Instagram at Paradigm1979 or on Twitter at paradigm_79. If anyone's got any that they think I should talk about, any, you know, like whether they want to hear more about the aliens or whatever, giants, whatever it is, you can send me an email at beyondtheparadigm@yahoo.com. So like I said, thanks very much, John.
Good.
And I've been Paul, and this is Beyond the Paradigm.